How's it going, guys? This is Nick White. I'm here starting a brand new podcast. We're coming live to you from the Bill Austin studio in downtown Phoenix at ASU. We're going to be breaking down the top 25. This is Omaha bound. Me and my buddy Scotty Gange decided that we wanted to take something that's not very well known, and that is college baseball, and bring it to the light. So today I have someone sitting with me here that's been all the way to the top. He's been on top of the dog pile in Omaha. It sucks it was with U of A, but hey, that's all right. It was fun watching him play. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Tyler.
How's it going? Tyler Crawford here, Phoenix native, Sunrise Mountain alum. Like Nick said, played at the University of Arizona. Please don't turn off the podcast now. Happily wearing my bear down sweatshirt as we record. Thanks for having me, Nick.
Absolutely. When you walked up, I had to give you a little bit of crap. You know, it's just how it is. I still follow you guys on Instagram. For those of you guys that don't know, me and Tyler played baseball at Sunrise Mountain High School in Peoria, Arizona, right here. We were an all right squad, I'd say. I mean, you can chime in. We were like
a little bit of talent.
Yeah, we were a little bit of talent. We were decent. Still couldn't win the big game because, you know, we choked, but that's all right. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to be breaking down the top 25 today. We got the preseason rankings. Season starts in, I think, 7 days for a couple teams, 8 for others. So today we're going to be breaking it down with number 25. We're going to kick this off real quick. Number 25, a team that's very, very recognizable, and that's Cal State Fullerton. At number 24, we have Clemson. Number 23, a team that went to Omaha last year, the Texas Longhorns. The number 22, Auburn Tigers, who lost their number 1 pick in Casey Mize, the pitcher. He went number 1 overall in the MLB draft. Coastal Carolina, Tyler, I know you don't like talking about them, but we're going to talk to them. And we have Wake Forest rounding out 25 through 20. Tyler, you played against Coastal Carolina. What was that like?
I did. They're a very, very talented program for someone that's not in a major conference. I know they made that switch to the Sun Belt last year. It looks like they still had some success. Their coach down there, his last name's Gilmore. He just does a fantastic job getting those guys down there. They mash pretty much every year. I assume that they are going to be the same this year. I saw that they have a couple arms returning. I know one of the arms was actually one of those key cogs in that bullpen in 2016, that team that beat us. I don't really want to talk about that anymore. Name's Bobby Holmes. He's a real solid arm, so I think he should be doing a pretty good job over there anchoring that staff. And like I said, they always rake, so they'll be a solid team.
Yeah, it looks like they have an outfielder coming back, Parker Chavers. He was a freshman last year. Tore it up for Coastal Carolina team that went 43-19, made it to the regionals, went 23-7 in the Sun Belt. Not a great league, but nonetheless, they do have a College World Series championship underneath their belt. What a team! Like you said, they always swing it. Did any of your players like face Bobby Holmes and talk to you about how he pitched?
Yeah, so he was coming out of their bullpen. He wasn't their closer, but he threw a lot of innings for them out of the bullpen, especially in that College World Series. They really rode him and one other arm who left after that year. But Holmes he's right-handed. I remember he was very slider heavy, really good sharp movement on that pitch. I know he missed last year for injury. I assume, though, that he's good to go. The slider was, like I said, extremely sharp. Not a huge velocity guy, but he really attacks the zone. A ton of competitiveness out of him. He should be very successful.
All right, we got other teams going back. Texas Longhorns, they made a nice little run to the postseason last year. They started a little low this year. I'm actually kind of surprised to see them so low after finishing 7th overall, but sometimes that's how it goes. Did you ever face them or the Auburn Tigers?
I did face Auburn all the way back in 2012. I think, TVs are still black and white then, but they have a lot of talent. Those SEC teams, they throw hard, they swing hard. Haven't faced them in a while, so I'm not too familiar with their roster. I haven't seen them, like I said, in a few years. I never got to play the Longhorns. That was one of those schools that I always wanted to face off with. They were kind of up and down during my time, so we really just didn't have a chance to face off. Don't know too much about them.
Do you know if Roger Cummins' son graduated? Wasn't he a senior last year?
I believe he's back in pro ball.
Yeah. I thought he went like the first round. Yeah. That dude could rake.
Yeah, he hit like 20-something homers, I think.
Yeah, I just remember him throwing up the Longhorns in the Super Regional.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to keep moving on. At number 19, we have TCU, they're always a threat going deep into the playoffs. Kind of dropped out. They usually are on the top 5. They are 19 this year. They went 33-23 last year, followed by Oklahoma State, Michigan, Arkansas, and then Baylor. Tyler, did you ever face off against TCU?
Didn't know. They always in Phoenix. I feel like they were always playing Canyon or ASU. We had a transfer from that school, so I got to hear about him a lot. He was very passionate about his prior school, but they're always arm dominant. I'm sure, as everyone knows, they really know how to pitch. That pitching coach down there, Sarloos, sounds like he's phenomenal, and they always have good guys as far as velo, and they're always going to be near the top.
Absolutely. And then another one that's kind of surprising is Arkansas at 16. After going to the College World Series final last year, talk about kind of like SEC baseball in general. I know you went down to Starkville. You played there. What is the atmosphere like in SEC baseball?
Yeah, that's got to be – obviously, I don't have any major league experience. That's got to be the closest I've ever been to it. Besides Omaha itself, those fan bases are rabid. They pack the house. They're loud. Those guys in the SEC, they just feel bigger than other teams that you play, if that makes sense. They throw hard. Like I said, they swing hard. It's almost a different game. It's a lot more of a professional style game that they play as opposed to these West Coast teams, the Pac-12, the Mountain West. We like to hit and run, bunt, slash. They like to play for that 3-run homer. And like I said, they throw hard.
And they actually, it looks like they have a little bit of an easier schedule. They play teams like Louisiana Tech, Western Illinois, and then that's when they get into the SEC. They play at Alabama. They play Ole Miss, who is always a solid quality team. That Auburn team that we just talked about. And then they play at number 1 Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is a team that's been there, done that. Then you go to Mississippi State. Mississippi State, what can we say about them? They come in at number 14 right after Baylor. You said that was one of your favorite spots to play in college baseball?
Oh, it's easily the most memorable. That fan base, like I said, is just incredible. They have, I know they've renovated it since I was last there in 2016, but the entire outfield wall, once you go past it, is essentially an area that you can drive up an RV to, and you basically buy a lot. And so seasons ticket holders have that. They have these trailers that they'll sit on top of. There was a forklift up there called the Redneck Skybox that had a couple people. You can also consume alcoholic beverages out there, so got a little bit rowdy. And then it's just first class across the board, Duty Noble Stadium. Absolutely incredible experience. It's quite the home field advantage.
Was it you that was telling me that they brought you food and stuff? They fed you guys?
So that was
even though you were the opposing team?
That was in Louisiana, in Lafayette. But I'm sure if we would have been in a different situation, that was during a rain delay. It was we got bored. We decided to crash the tailgate, and they were extremely accommodating. I have a feeling Mississippi State would have been the same way. Once the game starts, they get a little nasty. Some of the best trash talk I'd ever heard in that bullpen coming from those fans. And after the game, once we won, they were very, very respectful and very congratulatory towards us. Nothing but good experiences over there.
I just want to kind of circle back around and just talk about something real quick that we probably looked over. Texas at 23, Arkansas at 16, and Mississippi State at 14. All three went to the College World Series last year. Out of these three, which ones do you think has a chance to go back?
Oh, as far as Mississippi State with that talent that they return, I know they got Magnum. He's still there. I feel like he's been there for 10 years. I think he's a few hits away from the SEC record.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at.
And I'm in that record book. I gave up a double to him in the Supers. Still bitter about it. Hang and change up. You're welcome. Count it. And, Mississippi State, they have a ton of talent. I don't know too much about the talent returning at Texas. However,
I think they were really senior-ridden. That's why they're ranked
low. Makes a lot of sense. But then Arkansas, again, they're just a factory. You got guys like Benintendi coming out of there every year. It seems like another guy pops up, ends up going first round. So either one of those teams, those SEC teams, man, they just so much talent.
And I know last year what kind of was the staple for Arkansas was their pitching staff. And then Mississippi State, they just swung it so well. The ball jumped off their bat. I mean, the ball's going to jump off Arkansas's bat really, really well as well. Being from, the Southeastern Conference, they know how to swing it. So we'll go ahead and we'll move forward. At 13, we have Florida State. At 12, we have Stanford. At 11, we have East Carolina. And at 10 is Ole Miss. Ole Miss comes in at 48-17. Always another solid SEC school. It's going to be fun to watch these SEC schools just battle it out. But there at number 12, you have Stanford. That's going to be the highest Pac-12 team other than UCLA, who is in there a little later. What do you think about Stanford? What's kind of their game? You obviously played them quite a bit.
Yeah, another team that they almost recruit kind of in that SEC style where they recruit a lot of size, a lot of velocity. I know they the coach is gone now. Marquez retired, and his name escapes me, but he was at Cal when I was at U of A. Solid coach, knows how to get a lot out of his guys, but same thing. Big, strong pitchers. I feel like they don't even call you unless you're 6'4". Always have a ton of talent in the field. It's just one of those destinations where kids across the country want to go, so they get big name recruits all of the time. And they just, they're up there in Sunken Diamond. It's a great park, and they always seem to be competitive. It's very impressive how they turn out talent.
Another one up there at 13 was Florida State. As we know, and for those of you that don't know, it is Mike Martin's last year. Mike Martin has been there for honestly longer than we've been alive. His overall record is 2,887 to 1,085 losses and 10 ties. I don't know how you tie, but
That's back when they could tie.
That was the Florida State Seminoles record. That's not Mike Martin's. But Mike Martin is he's like the winningest coach?
He's got to be up there, yeah. I think Augie still has it, but Martin's got to be pushing it.
What do you think about that? Do you think that they're going to be able to make a push in their final season with Mike Martin at the helm?
What a story that would be. How close has he been? I mean, they were in Omaha the first time I went in 2012, and they had so much talent. They just couldn't get the job done due to, us boys down south. Sorry, ASU. And, it would be a great story. I don't know much as far as their talent coming back. Obviously, they're ranked really high. I've heard rumors that they like to get a little bit tight when it gets to Omaha. That's a lot of pressure. He's been coaching for 40 years, and he doesn't have that title. It's eluded him. So it'd be a great story, but I don't know if I see it happening.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you on that one. I know everyone knows that, Buster Posey went there. A lot of other great players went there. They just pump out great talent year after year after year. And even last year, what was their record? 43-19. Weren't they didn't they get upset in the first round in the regionals by, I don't even remember. It wasn't a very good team.
Yeah, and that's kind of been their MO. They for some reason I want to say, I can't remember off the top of my head, but they seem to underachieve a little bit, especially with all the talent like Nick, like you brought up over the last few years, maybe 10, 20 years. I mean, going back to guys like J.D. Drew and some of that really impressive alumni. They just seem to underachieve consistently. So it's disappointing, especially for a coach with the stature of someone like Martin. So hopefully they can maybe get the job done, but what a story that would be.
I mean, never mind. I definitely take that back. They lost on the regional to Mississippi State. That's a tough play. That even though you're at home in Tallahassee, that's definitely a tough spot to play.
Yeah, that Stanford loss isn't looking very good though.
Yeah, that's definitely. That was their. I remember we got the update, or I got the update when that loss happened because it was such a huge loss. I think they were the number 7 national seed that year or something like that. But we're moving ahead. From 10, like I said, is Ole Miss. At 9, we have Georgia. Number 8, we have the defending national champ, the Oregon State Beavers. They come in with a record of 55-12-1 last year. Won the College World Series. They lost their first game and then came back and won the next 2. That's definitely a hard thing to do, especially losing that first one. Tyler, talk about when it comes down to the College World Series final, what it's like going in. Is there nerves, especially if you maybe lose that first game? I think you won both first games, correct?
We won both first games. My second time we came through the losers bracket, we actually lost our second game, had to win 3 in a row to get to the finals. Once you lose that first one, it's kind of we compared it to the Hunger Games. Excuse me. And you're just out there trying to survive. So there wasn't, I can't speak for everyone on my team, there wasn't a ton of nerves for us. We the first time I was in Omaha, we kind of expected to win. So we just had that kind of talent. So there wasn't a ton of nerves. And like Nick said, it was kind of the easy route. We won the first game and just kind of steamrolled through. Second time in the losers bracket, we kind of felt like we were playing with house money. We were very senior heavy. So some guys that didn't get drafted as juniors were kind of leading that charge. It was kind of our last hurrah. We weren't expected to do much. We were actually picked 9th in the Pac-12 preseason. So not really a ton of nerves. And I think that's what makes you successful in Omaha. The teams that play tight aren't going to be as successful because there's so much outside noise. There's 25,000 people at the game. It's loud. There's these festivities. There's the celebrities. It's a completely different experience than your average college baseball game at which, maybe there's a couple thousand people if you're lucky. So those teams that are able to play like no one's watching are the teams that are going to have the most success.
And Oregon State had that success. They are bringing back their catcher. They actually lost a lot of talent to the MLB draft with Nick Madrigal and their shortstop. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head though.
Grenier.
Yeah. Both players up the middle, just outstanding. But they did bring back Adley Rutschman, who is projected to go number 1 overall in this year's MLB draft. Switch hitting catcher. Doesn't hit for a lot of power, but you said he hit like above 400 last year, yeah?
Yeah, I think I saw he hit 408 with 9 homers. It's not an easy park to hit at, first of all, up in Oregon with that thick, cold air. Played against Adley his freshman year. He wasn't much of a threat with the bat. Heck of a defensive catcher. He's got great size, too, for a catcher. I remember him being extremely tall. He's obviously developed that stick a little bit to be switch hitting. Super impressive. Heck of a ball player. He's got a ton of tools. I'm sure the scouts see that power is going to develop as he gets older. But switch hitting catchers, they just don't fall off trees, especially with that kind of size. So super impressive. Oregon State in general, so much depth. I feel like they churn out more arms. The arms were like robots. It's like the same person over and over. They just execute to perfection. I don't know, if that has a lot to do with Yeski, that pitching coach, if Pat Casey had a lot to do with that pitching staff. I don't know for sure. I know that Pat Casey retired. So it will be interesting to see how they are with a new head coach. But I don't doubt that they're going to have an extreme amount of talent coming back.
All right, then we'll go on to number 7. That is North Carolina. North Carolina last season, 44-20 overall. They finished 5th. They did make it to Omaha. And number 6 is Florida. The Florida Gators have won a national championship. Was it 2015 right before you? No, 2017. Yeah, 2017. And they just pumped out arms. Again, another SEC team. I think I counted 7 SEC teams. And, I mean, that's just how it is.
Every year. I mean, those teams they're special teams. They get a lot of the media attention, too. It's tough to argue with that. I know us in the Pac-12, we pride ourselves on being able to beat those teams when it comes to the postseason. But that's kind of your measuring stick during the year. You want to keep track of how those teams are doing. Florida's no exception.
And then we're going to start out the top 5. Coming in at number 5, we have another Pac-12 school. It's going to be the highest ranked Pac-12 school. Kind of surprising over Oregon State, but that is UCLA. They come in with a record last year of 38-21. And I'm not going to lie, I was reading up on this team earlier, and they are bringing back a ton of talent, a ton of bats, a ton of pitching staff. Just an all-around great team who did win the national title in 2013. They have been to Omaha. They do have that experience. They know what to expect when the season comes down to it. Tyler, talk about how UCLA kind of plays their game and what it's like to go into UCLA and play them there.
Yeah, so first of all, they're very pitching-oriented. A bunch of dudes, again, a lot of robots. It just feels like they pump out guys that just know how to pitch. I know the difference in the last couple of years is they finally got some bats on campus, and I believe they were pretty young last year, that lineup, and they were really swinging the sticks well. And obviously those guys are coming back, so that's going to make them extremely dangerous because the pitching is always going to be there. Very tough place to play. It's very small, Jackie Robinson Stadium. However, it's very intimate, and they're kind of on top of you. And I don't know if you're familiar, Nick, with like the Dodger Stadium, how they have that massive speaker out in center field.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
They have. I'm sure it's a miniature version, but they have one kind of like that just pumps music so loud. It's honestly distracting. I used to get so frustrated with some of those walk-up songs. I remember I started a game there, and they love that speaker. That's all I'll say. But it's a tough place to play, and they're very, very good.
And they were one of the teams you guys had to beat in your run, right? Did you run into them?
Yeah, in 2012, we beat them in our second game, and then I believe I want to say we beat Florida State. Yeah, we beat them in their second game, our second game, their second game, and I think they lost to someone, maybe Florida State or something like that. But they were in Omaha in 2012, and then like you said, they won it in 2013, and they've been solid ever since. I know they usually struggle with the bats. They were always very small ball oriented, kind of like that West Coast style that I was talking about earlier, but to an extreme. Almost, it felt like they were bunting every inning, slashing, stealing. Always have good athletes over there. But now with these new sticks, I think it really helps them. I think they're actually going to be extremely dangerous because that pitching staff's always going to be lights out, and if they're scoring runs, it's going to be a really tough team to beat.
I'm glad you said that they execute because I remember I was actually at that series in Omaha. One of my buddies, I was staying there playing summer baseball there. His dad was actually the host for UCLA that year.
Oh, okay.
So we got to meet like all of them. They drove them around, like, you know how the hosts go, but
Yeah.
So we got tickets to every UCLA game, and I cannot stress this enough. They had maybe 3 people hitting over 300. Their starting second baseman was hitting 218, and I've never seen someone bunt / hit and run so much in my entire life.
And they know how to do it. In that run, that year that you're talking about, they had a couple kids, and I'm sure they're still playing pro ball, but they were winning games 2-1, 3-2. I'm sure if you go look at those box scores. I remember there was a situation where the leadoff hitter got hit by a pitch, and I was like, oh, that's a guaranteed run. It's one of those situations where they're going to bunt that guy over, or they're going to execute a steal, or a ball in the dirt, he takes second. They're going to move him to third with less than 2 outs. They're going to execute, make sure they hit a sac fly, get something out of the infield, and next thing you know, they scored a run, and that's about all they need with that pitching staff. So they're extremely well coached. I think John Savage does an unbelievable job with those guys because, like I said, they hadn't really gotten a ton of talented bats on campus, and obviously that's changed. But it's very impressive the way they run that team.
Oh, yeah, and for those people that don't know, if anybody watches Major League Baseball, you got to know who Garrett Cole and Trevor Bauer are. Those dudes were on the same team at freaking UCLA. What was that, 2009?
2010, 2011, I think.
Yeah, we were still in high school. Those were the good old days.
They didn't get out of a regional. Their junior year when they went 1-3 in the draft, they lost in their own regional.
They lost in their own regional?
Yeah, so they went to, I want to say they took second in 2010 with those two, and then they came back as juniors, and I think they just kind of walked through the season, and then they came regional time, and they got upset. I remember it was a huge deal.
Oh, yeah, I remember because they pitched both of them in one game, I'm pretty sure, something like that.
They might have. I don't remember. I just remember that they lost with that much talent. It's just kind of unheard of.
Yeah, I remember because, like, Garrett Cole was projected to be the number 1 overall pick, which he did end up going. I think Bauer went, like, 8th overall or something like that. But he had, like, this faded hat that he just left on his dashboard. And, like, somehow this just became, like, the biggest story of the College World Series was this dusty old hat on this guy that could throw, like, 95 miles. But, like, wasn't even their number 1.
He was disgusting.
Yeah, he was. Like, Garrett Cole blew it away, but he was filthy.
Cole was upper 90s, but I felt like the stuff that Bauer had was honestly kind of similar to the stuff he has now, and trying to face that as a college hitter, you just don't see it a lot. So I felt like a lot of guys were overwhelmed.
Absolutely. We'll keep going down with this countdown. At number 4, we have Louisville coming in. Last season, they went 45-19. I'm actually trying to figure out some stuff on why they are named so high. It looks like they have a Golden Spikes Award preseason watch list guy. All I know is that in recent years, Louisville is known to swing it. They don't necessarily pitch very well. A lot of their games they win like 7-5, 7-6, whatever have you. But they finished the season unranked with 45-19. Looks like they're leading the ACC this year, so it looks like they should be able to come out. At number 3, we have Texas Tech. They finished last season 45-20, 6th overall. They were another team that went to Omaha. Do you think they could go back to Omaha? I know they've been going back in and out for like 5 years, I want to say now.
Yeah, they've gotten a lot more consistent. I remember when I was in school, I faced a team in 2013 on a midweek. I actually threw pretty well that game, but you could tell they were very young at the time, but you could tell the talent was going to be there. And I think within a couple years, I guess in 2016 they were there with us. So ton of talent. I do think whoever that coach is over there is doing a great job. I know they seem to be pumping out some arms as of late, and I know they usually hit for some power. I believe that's who eliminated, or that was the regional that U of A went to in 2017, and then I think Sam Houston State came out of it. But very talented group over there. The Texas kids, there's so many of them. They swing it. They really know how to pitch. That Big 12 conference is very competitive. I feel like with these Power 5 conferences, anytime you see someone in the top of those conferences, they're just going to have an incredible amount of talent. I don't think these guys are any exception. I think they absolutely could make a run.
Yeah, and they have a first-team preseason All-American and another Golden Spikes Award watch list guy named Josh Jung. This guy is the real freaking deal. He's a junior, and his stats were just crazy. As a sophomore, he played in all 65 games at third base. He hit .306, and he had 75 hits, 14 doubles, and 6 bombs. So not a lot of home runs, but a .306 batting average in the Big 12, I would say that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I'm taking away is he had 80 ribbies. That's to have 80 RBIs in a season where you only play 65 games. I mean, you're producing some runs. So I'm looking at it right now, 491 on base percentage. He's getting on base half the time. Yeah, very impressive. Extremely impressive.
Yeah, he hit .306 as a freshman. As a sophomore, he hit .392. He doubled his home runs. He went from 6 to 12, and then he had 17 doubles. Just an absolute mammoth hitter. I know UNM, where I used to play for a little bit, they played Texas Tech a lot. So to see them emerge as one of the top programs in college baseball is just freaking awesome. Real quick before we go on to the final two, I actually kind of want to talk about that. In this preseason top 25, I feel like there's a couple teams that you don't always look to when you think of college baseball. You have like Wake Forest, East Carolina. I know East Carolina has emerged a lot recently. And then teams like Texas Tech, they've emerged recently, but in the early 2000s, even 2010, they weren't really like a relevant Omaha type team.
Yeah.
Talk about that. I mean, you obviously play Coastal Carolina, so you know a little bit about the small schools.
Yeah, that's a great example. Coastal they do a phenomenal job. On the West Coast, you have University of San Diego that always seems to be in and out of the top 25. These mid-major schools, they do a really good job of recruiting, and I think they have the correct coaching staffs, if they get the right players to campus, they do a phenomenal job. I know another example would be like a Louisiana Lafayette. Not something you think of as a particular powerhouse by any means, but they throw together these teams that have so much talent, and it's really unique. And I think that's the beauty of college baseball is that parity. You're not going to see a non-Power 5 conference team win a national championship in a lot of sports, but you see it a lot in baseball, and I think that makes it so much more fun than the predictability of what you see in some of the other major sports, and I think that's a perfect example of it.
And you just love to see like the small town baseball. Baseball is one of those games where you always root for the underdog just about every single time. So, that's something that I love to see, especially with Coastal Carolina. Sorry, but that was great to see them kind of win. I really wish you could have got your second ring. I'm not going to lie.
Thanks. Only one in U of A history I would have been.
Yeah, and this dude, you guys got to see this Pac-12 ring and this national championship ring. This thing is off the chain. This thing is huge. When I first saw it, I was like, I thought he won the freaking Super Bowl or like the World Series. They hook you up.
I want to point out that I'm not wearing it right now.
No, he's not wearing it. He's too modest. Go look up Tyler Crawford's stats and talk to anybody who knows him. You'll know he's like one of the most modest people of all time.
I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Well, just like something. No, I'm just kidding. All right, moving on to number 2, we have LSU, another SEC team. They aren't the top team. You're going to find out who the top team is. They are returning junior right-hander Zach Hess. He's also on the Golden Spikes watch list, and this dude can pump. In his career, he has 153 innings and has only recorded 79 walks and 190 strikeouts, limiting opponents to a .216 cumulative batting average. Tyler, .216 batting average, that's freaking fire, huh?
Yeah, that's really good. Obviously, he has good stuff. I don't know much about him. yeah, I mean, we're using metal bats here in college baseball, so you see batting averages in the 400s. So it's obviously an impressive number. I'm sure that his stuff is off the charts. I feel like LSU is just a factory. I mean, you can name some pretty significant big leaguers probably right off the top of your head when you think of that school. I mean, you got Aaron Nola and Alex Bregman coming out of there, and probably in the last 3-4 years alone, it's just a factory. I'm sure he's no different. I feel like that school kind of recruits itself with that atmosphere over at the box and, their SEC. And I feel like they've kind of been on top of the college baseball world, even though they don't have the titles to back it up. They're always in the mix, and it's a pretty special place.
Yeah, their last title came back in 2009.
Sounds right.
Yeah, in 2009. One of my old hitting coaches actually had a player, Shrano Chinko, was on that team. He played first base. Only first baseman I've ever seen block a ground ball like a catcher. Because he was a catcher, but he could swing it, so they put him at first base to just give it a try. But anyway, LSU finished last year 39-27. They were unranked, made a regional appearance. Definitely looking to build up again this year. Like I said, they're bringing back their star pitcher. They're bringing back a ton of bats. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do against teams like our number one team in the nation, Vanderbilt. They come in with a 35-27 record last season, finished 18th overall. What I'm seeing a lot with these SEC teams is that even though they're ranked so high, they don't have these crazy records like 55-12 like Oregon State and 44-18 like East Carolina, and that's because they just beat up on each other all the time.
They do. The competitiveness in that conference is just ridiculous. Night in, night out, you're playing a top 25 team. I think that's why you see early on in the season, you'll see some of those weaker schedules from those teams because they don't necessarily worry about things like their RPI or anything like that because they make up for it with their conference. They just don't have a choice. You have to play series against 8 or 9 ranked teams a season. So you're right. I do think they beat up on each other, and I think the media is well aware of that, and that's why you see some of these high rankings. But it's hard to argue when they produce the players that they produce, and you consistently see them in the College World Series, and you see them hosting regionals and hosting supers. It's hard to argue. I'm obviously a homer for the Pac-12, but the SEC and their dominance is tough to argue against.
And Vanderbilt, as you guys know, they won it in 2014. They had Dansby Swanson on that team. Walker Buehler was on that team. And then actually Walker Buehler and Dansby Swanson came back in 2015 on the team that went back and tried to repeat. It was actually kind of funny. They played – it was Virginia and Vanderbilt in back-to-back years.
That was impressive.
And Virginia got the better of them the second time, which was actually surprising because they were better their second year. But that rounds out the top 25. Vanderbilt's leading it off. They're looking to take another title home. Last title hasn't been since 2014. Very close. They have a great bunch of talent. Obviously, they've had 2 number 1 overall picks come out of there with David Price and Dansby Swanson. So, Tyler, just real quick, I know the college baseball, it can go whichever way. If you were going to randomly shotgun out 8 teams that you think could compete in Omaha, what 8 teams do you think it would be?
All right. Let me take a peek at it. So I think you're going to see UCLA and Oregon State in the mix. They're just in the mix every year. I think UCLA with those bats are going to be a force to be reckoned with. I think the beauty of the preseason top 25 is a good portion of those teams aren't going to end in the top 25. So talk to me in a few months, and I probably have a different answer for you. But I definitely think those 2 teams are going to be on the top of the Pac-12. Very, very good conference. As far as the SEC goes, I think you're going to see a Vanderbilt in the mix. I also think that Florida's going to be in the mix. They always are. I actually am looking, just trending the way that they have been. I could see Ole Miss finally taking that next step and really trying to compete for a national title.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely agree with that.
Plus, I just love those YouTube videos they put out. I don't know if you've seen those by any chance, Nick.
Yeah, I watch those all the time, and I watch.
They're unbelievable.
Vanderbilt does some like their season recaps. They're like 30 minutes long, but there's some good quality videos.
I watch those Ole Miss videos. I was watching those at U of A ready to run through a wall. Those are they do a good job with those.
And they won the SEC tournament last year. It's not like they're just like, oh, we made it in. Like they went out and beat everybody on one field in they're like a week, right?
Yeah, it's those conference tournaments. I wish the Pac-12s would do them. I know the logistics of it's a little tough, but how fun is that? I mean, you're playing, especially a conference like the SEC, you're playing 6 or 7 top 25 teams at any given day in a week span. That's unbelievable stuff. But back to what you were asking, how many did I name?
You named 4. Yeah, you had UCLA, you had Oregon State, you had Vanderbilt, you had Ole Miss, and you had Florida. So you had 5.
Okay,
5.
Florida State will make a run too. Martin's last year, they're going to really want to do it. So 6, I'm going with it.
6.
Oh, you want me to do 2 more?
No, I would definitely agree. I was just actually thinking about that because, yeah, Florida State's going to be motivated this year with their coach. Their coach just knows how to teach the game, and if you guys have ever watched them, they're very well fundamental. But, yeah, you can definitely tell the style of play. They get a lot tighter. Our coach called it, getting your butthole tight.
Yeah.
that was our saying when we get super tight in games. But you can just tell they don't play with that swagger anymore. I actually do think Clemson could be a team that could like slide in. I know they lost Seth Beer, but they bring back just about everybody else. And Clemson knows how to pitch it too, and they're facing pressure from their football team. They need to get it. They need to make a run right now.
Yeah. No, another super talented program. That the ACC is pretty phenomenal as well. Just so much talent. The thing that I was always jealous of, I guess not as a pitcher, was I feel like those ballparks are so much smaller. you see,
you played at High Corbett. That's huge.
It's like a national park. I still give up some homers there though.
One of my favorite memories was what's his name? Who was the center fielder?
At U of A?
Yeah, your freshman year. He had a grand slam at your park in the.
Oh, you're thinking of Johnny Field?
Yeah, Johnny Fields.
Yeah, he went over the scoreboard in the regional. I think it was against Louisville.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, it was a tank.
Yeah, I loved watching you guys play.
That year was special. That group of older guys kind of just carried us. I was just kind of along for the ride. Got my number called a couple times. Got some experience, but that was I think we had a big leaguer coming off the bench as a defensive replacement. That's how talented that team was. We had Brandon Dixon. Brandon Dixon,
who actually won you guys the World Series.
He gets the game-winning hit. Yeah, he was a big leaguer last year for the Reds. He didn't start, so that kind of tells you the kind of talent we had that year. I was talking with someone recently. That 2012 ASU team was banned from the postseason for those violations. That team was extremely talented. Would have loved to see what they could have done in the postseason. That was my favorite year of that rivalry. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think I remember coming and watching that game because you guys. I think you got me tickets. You got me and one of my friends tickets to that game or something like that.
Yeah, I gave up a leadoff bomb.
I wasn't gonna say that. But I mean, yeah, you brought it up, my man. But real quick before we go, just the last couple questions. So obviously you went to U of A. You played against ASU a lot. We're in the same dang state. How do you think U of A and ASU will fare in the Pac-12 this year?
I think I don't want to speculate too much because I'm not truly an expert, but I feel like Tracy Smith might be a little bit on the hot seat based on their performance recently. From what I've seen, it doesn't seem like he's recruited a ton of local kids. I'm sure he has a few here and there, but I feel like U of A is kind of winning that battle right now. It should be interesting. I think U of A right now I'd give the upper hand to, not just being a homer. I just think they're returning a little bit more. Their pitching staff's kind of a question mark right now. They're returning a fifth-year senior that I actually played with by the name of Randy LeBeau. He's pretty legitimate Friday night arm in the Pac-12, left-handed guy. But, U of A can really swing it. Tons of sticks in that lineup. As far as ASU goes, I think they need to be better fundamentally. I think if you go back and you look at their fielding percentages, things like that, they don't do a great job, and that goes back kind of to the Esme days. If you put pressure on them, you play that West Coast baseball, it's kind of their MO to struggle with that. So I think if they can pitch it and they can field it a little better, they have some sticks. I think that Bishop kid is going to go off. He hasn't put up the numbers yet, but he is an absolute monster physically. I've seen some things on Twitter from his brother because I used to play against his brother when he was at the University of Washington, and he's been hitting some absolute moonshots in these preseason scrimmages. And then obviously they're returning that Torkelson kid. I think he set the freshman record for home runs. So
yeah, he beat Barry Bonds' record.
Heard of him? He's a special talent, that's for sure. So I think they'll score runs. They just need to play catch and throw some strikes, and they should be fine. But it should be a good battle.
All right, so last question. So obviously this is called Omaha Bound. I didn't tell you that.
Okay.
That's the title of this podcast, Omaha Bound. And you've been there. You've been there twice. You've been on top of the dog pile, like I've said.
Took a cleat to the chest.
Was that? I was about to ask you, like, one, what was the dog pile like, and two, what is your favorite story from your Omaha? Whether it was like obviously like besides winning it, that's your cool. But like I'm sure like funny stuff happens between both 2012 and was it 2016?
Yeah. Dogpile was amazing. Only got to experience it. I mean, we dogpiled for the Super in 2016. It's not the same kind of dogpile. Special moment. 2012, I was the last person out. I was warming up in the bullpen. I was hot, ready to go. Bases were loaded. It was a 3-run game. I think I was one hitter away from coming in. So ball goes up in the air. The bullpen catchers, the coach down there with us, and another arm who wasn't on the mound just yet, bolted for the gate. Had a head start on me. I was the very last person to jump on the dog pile. Didn't know I could get up that high. I'm sure my strength coach was just beaming with pride seeing the gains I had made. Jumped right on top of one of our backup catchers. His spike went straight into my chest. I had about a 4-inch long gash across my my chest after. Worth it. Didn't feel a thing. Favorite memory, though, that's extremely tough. I got to sit next to Nomar Garcia-Parra at a dinner. It's pretty incredible. Hilarious guy. I think the biggest thing and the number one story I like to tell people is that the way they treat you there is a sick joke. You fly private, you land private. They take you straight from, you land straight off the plane onto a bus. Police escorts everywhere you go. That's the big thing that I tell everyone. They literally will have a police escort to drive you to the field, and it's maybe a half mile from the hotel. And it's, I think just that overall experience, you can't really pick one. It's so surreal. Obviously, some of my best memories as a ball player, though.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm not going to lie. I was super jealous. I was still in high school, by the way. He's a year older than me. We went to the state championship game our junior year, and then getting to watch him. Well, we lost that state championship game. I'll just throw that in there. That was BS. But to watch him win the national championship his freshman year in Omaha, which is like something that every baseball player knows, just about every kid knows, was awesome to get to watch you do that. So I'm super excited for you, man. Thanks for coming down and talking about this top 25 with me. It's going to be a good season, guys. We're going to bring you the different rankings each season. We're going to highlight key matchups in future episodes. So keep tuning in. Keep following us each week. We're going to come on. We're going to let you know which teams are doing the best, what players are going to be making a run at the Golden Spikes Award, as well as what teams are going to be looking at to get some players in the MLB draft as well. We talked about a few today. But as the season goes on, these players are going to get better. And real quick before we sign off, Tyler, what was the MLB or the All-American that you struck out in the College World Series?
I saw he just got a coaching job somewhere. His name was James Ramsey, Mr. Goggles himself.
If you guys don't know that name, Google it. This dude was raw at Florida State, so he K'd him up. All right, everybody, we're going to sit here we got our man Scotty Gange in the studio. He's joining us. He's going to break down a couple of top teams that he likes. He's going to give us his way too early College World Series predictions. Scotty, go ahead and introduce yourself, man.
Yeah, what's up? I'm excited to be here. I enjoyed listening to the conversation that you and Tyler had. He sounds like he's a lot smarter than I am, but I'll still try to give my predictions and try to throw things out there. I won't go the full top 25, but I will point out a few teams that I think will make a pretty good run. You guys had Cal State Fullerton at 25, and my early one I have them at 20. They're actually playing here in Arizona next weekend. That's the MLB College Invitational in Scottsdale. They're going to play TCU, Vanderbilt, and Virginia all in that same weekend, and that's this upcoming weekend. So that should be a lot of fun. I've got them at 20. At TCU, who I just said will be playing Cal State Fullerton. They're at 15. They didn't have the best season last year, 23 losses, like you guys said. Finished the year unranked, but it's a team that, as you guys were both talking about, they're always find their way in the mix, and I think that the Horned Frogs are going to make a run this year. Stanford of the Pac-12 have them number 10 this year, 46-12 last year. They're a top-tier team in the Pac-12. They've got some emerging talent, but they did lose their top 2 hitters to the MLB draft last year. But it's also a team like Stanford. You always know they're going to be good, especially in the baseball department. Oregon State, I have them at 5, the national championships, but losing or national champions of last year. Kevin Abel, the pitching stud, he's coming back, but losing Pat Casey, their head coach, is just detrimental to the program. So I do think they still have the talent that Pat Casey brought in, but slowly and surely, I think they're going to make their way down. But this year, they'll still be pretty solid, I think. My top 3, UCLA, Vanderbilt, LSU. I mean, it goes without saying, all 3 of those teams are fantastic. Antoine Duplantis of LSU, the senior, he hit 328 last year, and he's coming back for his senior year. And Zach Hess, their superstar pitcher, should be all-American pitcher this year, as he has been before. And so I guess my top 2, my College World Series prediction, I've got LSU over Vanderbilt. It's not very exciting, but those 2 teams I would say are far away from everybody else. UCLA is very good, Texas Tech and Louisville too, but Vanderbilt and LSU, they're just kind of like a whole new, they're just a step above everybody else. At least that's the way I see it right now.
I'm going to go ahead and agree with you on that. My shakeup's a little bit different. I'm a big believer in underdogs, so if I'm gonna go ahead and give my final 8 that I think in the way too early College World Series predictions, I'm definitely going to have to go with Vanderbilt and LSU. Scotty, you talked about Hess coming back. Look for him to be a finalist in the final 3 for the Golden Spikes. Right. He can absolutely shove. His stuff on the mound is second to none. Also look for him to be called off the board early in June. Vanderbilt, I mean, what can you say about Vanderbilt? Just anchored down. That's all you have to say. Everyone knows when you go to Nashville and you try and play them or play them anywhere, they're going to be a really disciplined team. They hit really well. They pitch really well. Look for them to climb back up and make it to the final. UCLA as well, they can just flat out pitch it. Tyler talked about that before. They just pump out arm after arm after arm, and they swing it well enough to score runs. If you get them in a 2-1 ball game, you're not going to put up a lot of runs on that pitching staff. Another one I'm really, really excited about is Ole Miss. So everyone's counting on Vanderbilt and LSU to lead the SEC, but don't sleep on Ole Miss. Ole Miss won the SEC tournament last year. They were a super high-seeded team. They finished the year at 15. They went 48-17 overall. Look for those bats to come back and just absolutely tear through the SEC. Arkansas, you can never count them out. I definitely think that they would be another team that could make another run. They pump out great arms. But the team that I think will be in the final that maybe not a lot of people think right now is Mississippi State. Mississippi State brings back a great hitter who is actually going for the all-time hits record for Mississippi State, playing at Starkville. I mean, Tyler mentioned that. He went there when U of A beat them in 2016, but it was second to none. They know how to bring out a crowd. Baseball is in their blood down there in Starkville, so I expect them to make another deep run. They finished 4th last year with a record of 39-29, so look for them. And then, again, I said this before, I think Clemson is going to show out this year. They did lose Seth Beer, but that pitching staff, they can always swing it. The ball jumps at their yard, so look for them to kind of make an impact in the ACC and in the College World Series.
The biggest thing I caught from really, I guess, both you and I and then Tyler's breakdown of all the teams is that there are a lot of really, really good teams this year, at least just based off the surface and preseason. Looking at it right now, I mean, you talk Mississippi State. I've got them all the way up at up in 15 ranked or 16 ranked for me, and I still think they're a phenomenal team and a team that could very well make their way to the College World Series. So that's the kind of exciting part about this, Nick, is that there's a lot of talent out there this year and a lot of really good teams and even more so really good players around the country in college baseball.
Yeah, and one team to definitely not sleep on, I know they are the, for the lack of better terms, the choke artists in college baseball. That's Florida State. It's Mike Martin's last year. He's one of the winningest coaches in college baseball behind Augie Garrido. So look for them in his final season to make a run. They are ranked extremely high. They're ranked 13th. They finished last year at 43-19, but they were bounced in the first round by Mississippi State. But they lost their first game to Samford. So look for them to make a run, with this being Mike Martin's last year, trying to get his, I think it's his first national championship, something like that. And they go all the time. So look for that motivation to kind of drive them.
Yeah, and most of all, I just think it's going to be an exciting season. You know, last year was fun, especially seeing a lot of Pac-12 schools, which is kind of more our neck of the woods, find their way to the very end. You know, especially Oregon State winning it at the top, and you know, Arizona State, the team closest to home, they're not going to be that good this year, but they are playing lots of really good talent, which will be exciting to see.
Yeah, that Oregon State, you talked about them. They're bringing back one of their good pitchers. They did lose Pat Casey, but they are bringing back another guy that possibly could go number 1 overall. That's Atlee Rushman, switch hitting catcher. And just for you guys that don't watch baseball, that is very, very rare. Those guys go to the top of the draft boards, top of the recruiting boards when they hear switch hitting catcher who can hit for power and average. They do play ASU. They come down to Phoenix Municipal Park. They will be down here, so we'll get to see them firsthand. So look for them to go deep. They did lose their middle infield. They lost a couple key guys to the first-round draft, the first-round MLB draft. So, but still, always look for them to be dangerous.
Yeah, and just going with the Pac-12 trend, UCLA, I have them at number 3, and a team we haven't really been focused on that much. UCLA might very well have the best pitching rotation in the country. They've got a number of guys that can swap in and out. That would be number 1 ace pitchers on most teams in the country. They've got about 3 of those guys, and so that's going to be really fun to see. And a team that had a solid year last year couldn't quite get it done the way they wanted to, probably because they had teams like Stanford as well as Oregon State in their way. But UCLA, I think, is a team that's going to have a big chip on their shoulder, and a team that is a program that's won a national championship a few times.
And Scotty, I asked Tyler this. I'm kind of interested in your opinion. So as we look at the top 25 rankings, obviously it's really early. The season hasn't even started. But I see a lot of teams that aren't, or that you don't really expect to be in the top 25, like an Eastern Carolina in there at 11. We have Coastal Carolina in there at 21, even though they did win a College World Series a couple of years ago. Even Auburn, you're not really used to seeing. Michigan, schools like that. Texas Tech is all the way at number 3, and I feel like everyone's kind of sleeping on them. How do you think, or what do you think about like the emergence of these teams climbing into the top 25 in baseball, whereas football it might not be like that?
Yeah, I mean baseball. It kind of shows just how important it is to have some of those stud players, and all these smaller schools have found their way to get the big time recruits to go to their schools. Football, you need 5 stars from across the country to really put together a solid program. But lots of these schools have really good coaches. We've seen Coastal Carolina lead a team of not really even top recruits to win a national championship just because they're a well-rounded team. You've got a solid 9 in the field, and you can get a few stud pitchers. That's really all you need for sometimes to string wins together. And it's fun to see that we've got teams like Georgia, Florida State, Vanderbilt, LSU, of course, massive schools and schools that everybody would love to play baseball at. But also, you talked about Coastal Carolina, Eastern Carolina, smaller schools like that finding their way to the top. It's exciting because you're going to have some David versus Goliaths, at least in school size, playing together. But it's going to be a pretty even match on the diamond.
Absolutely, and look forward to those matchups. I know a lot of these schools like Eastern Carolina and stuff like that, they're trying to build their resume, so they actually do play really, really quality opponents throughout the season. So look forward to that. Guys, we're going to be doing this every week, kind of updating you on the top 25, how the weekend went for these top 25, as well as ranking players, like I said. So tune in every week, come hang out with us, talk baseball, and yeah, guys, enjoy the weekend.